Hey everybody, welcome back to the Mifflin House. This is a Hometown History Extra. I'm Donnie, this is Jamie, and this is Pete Miele. And
hey.
He's in charge of all things the Mifflin House. So we're going to give a little interview with Pete, and this is based on our live stream that we just had our main episode about the history of the Mifflin House. So, Pete...
I haven't seen these questions. I don't know what I'm...
We're not trying to put you on the spot or anything.
So I'm going to dive right into what I find most interesting, and that is this like Civil War, like new information that's coming out. Can you give us a rundown on like what are we finding out as far as this site and its significance in the Civil War?
Well, you know, Scott Mingus has done great work. He's the dean of the Battle of Wrightsville, and I believe it's in Flames Beyond Gettysburg that he makes the case that there were some cannon up here, and that was something that was used to help save the site. But as we've done more and more research and gotten into some sources that maybe weren't available when Scott was doing his research, that's a little bit in question at this point, whether or not the cannon were actually up here or whether they were a little bit further west. But what that also brings in is thinking about where the entrenchments were. And we know that there were entrenchments guarding the approach to Wrightsville. There's evidence to suggest that there was a north-south line along what's basically now Cool Springs Road, would have gone through the intersection and gone south onto Cool Creek Road, that was sort of the main defensive line, and then there were these two kind of arms that stretched back towards the river. And that's been pretty well accepted, but the question for us is where are those arms that stretch back to the river, and especially where is the one north of town? Is it on these fields? Is it underneath the housing tract that's just south of us? So as we engage in this project over the next year or so, we're going to be doing a cultural landscape report, so trying to engage with a consultant to find out what is the history of this land, what's it been used for. I mean, we know what it's been used for over the last 200 years, but how has it changed? If we can find any evidence about what crops were planted, who was doing the farming. We know that the Mifflins were not farmers. They were not Jonathan Mifflin was not out there with a horse and plowing the field. They were renting it probably to the tenant farmer who lived in the log home that you talked about earlier. So trying to find out that information, because as you mentioned, one of the big aspects of this project is to have walking trails on the property. We have 4 miles of walking trails planned. Well, we want to make sure that we don't run a walking trail through a potential entrenchment, a potential important land feature. So as we move into the next phase of the project, which is going to include the rehabilitation of the house and the initial trail system, we're committed to doing a historic structures report on the house and doing a cultural landscape report so we can better understand what we're dealing with before we start putting sledgehammers through walls. I say that unless I get angry, we're not putting a sledgehammer through a wall before 2027.
Well, I have a question. When can I expect the inaugural Mifflin House Civil War reenactment to happen on the land?
Well, let's talk.
I happen to be a Civil War reenactor.
I know you are, yeah.
Be able to facilitate
So
that.
they did, I believe it was in 2023, Jim might know, there was a living history up here. The Liberty Rifles came up.
Oh, yeah, very reputable.
Right, and they had cannon here, and they raised the money for the Civil War Trails markers that are now down at the end of Cherry Street.
That's awesome.
Which I'm happy to announce that those Civil War Trail markers are going to be moving up here to the Mifflin House. They're going to be installed right off Cool Springs Road outside the gates. They need to be accessible 24/7, so they're actually going to be right as you turn in, and so we're really excited to be getting that up here. So it's a legacy of that living history.
That's awesome.
Is coming to this property.
You make me think about camp security and how we have 2 amazing sites in York County that we don't know the history of. Because I remember, so Pete and I are going through the same PhD program at Penn State.
Well, you already went through it. You did it already. I'm still
but I remember,
dragging on it. But.
You'll get there. I remember getting really frustrated because my professor said, pick a topic that no one's done before. And I was like, well, everything's been done.
Easier said than done,
yes,
right?
Everything's been done.
It hasn't, though.
Right. And so it made me think about how today, as things are going on, when we think about skirmishes, when we think about current events over in Iran right now, things are so well documented that in 100 years, when people go to write books, it's not going to be as Indiana Jonesy. It's not going to be as investigative. But what you're doing here is actual original research. It's kind of exciting.
And there's some really great newspaper articles that are written mostly in Columbia newspapers after the fight here. That's where a lot of the information comes from. Of course, we have accounts of some of the townspeople, both in Wrightsville and Columbia, and then an after-action report, an official record report from Jacob Frick, who is the commander of the militia unit that's mostly in this area. So we do have some great evidence, but then you always end up with the questions like that. They give us a lot of information, but you're always like, well, why didn't they tell us that? Why didn't they tell us that? Why didn't the Mifflins write down how? Yeah. Why didn't the Mifflins write down how many freedom seekers came through this house? People can ask those questions, and either they at the time maybe they just didn't. Think it was important, or in the case of the Mifflins. Maybe not wanting to keep records. We don't know. We can't ask them. We wish we could ask them those questions. But right, that there's and the fight here in Wrightsville is short. It's an hour and a half. 4:30, the Confederates appear on the edge of town, and by 6:30 the bridge is on fire. So it's not long, and then all of the people who are defending the bridge are gone, and then the Confederates are gone. So it's they're not sitting down and pulling out maps and drawing, and of course nobody's taking pictures. So you really have to rely on what is there, and then try to kind of piece together as much as you can. And we're doing that with the Underground Railroad story as well.
And a lot of interpretation.
Correct.
So, and that's what I think was so cool about this place, is this is going to be an interpretive site where you come in and talk about the Underground Railroad and its story. Tell us more about this art museum at the new in the barn.
Well, so it's actually going to be an addition on the barn. So many people who will watch this or are sitting here know Rob Evans. Rob Evans is an artist. He's lived in the area for decades, and his inspiration is the Susquehanna River. And it was probably in about 2005 that Rob started to collect historic art of the Susquehanna River and contemporary. But he developed a thesis that the Susquehanna River was a forerunner to the Hudson River School of Art. That there was a school of art based on the Susquehanna River, that some of the truly American landscape painters were here and working on this river, and then go off, people like Thomas Cole going off to paint landscapes of the Hudson River. The other part of that thesis is that there are people that are commodifying the river, that are putting images of the river on teapots, on plates, publishing it, the pictures in books. And then there's a literary aspect, because like James Fenimore Cooper is writing about the headwaters of the Susquehanna and the upper part of the Susquehanna. So all of that. And Rob mounted a few traveling exhibits. One was at Gettysburg College in 2023 or 2024. Anyway, that collection is mostly at the Ingrid Graham Historic Hellam Preserve, not too far from here. But in 2024, the Board of Directors of the Susquehanna National Heritage Area resolved to explore including a river art component as part of the Susquehanna Discovery Center project. And through our master planning process over the last year, we determined that the best approach is to integrate the art collection and the art museum with the Susquehanna Discovery Center. So we just approved our master plan a few months ago, and what we're going to do here is to add an addition to the west side of the barn. It's actually going to block out the warehouse complex from the campus core, and that is going to house 3 galleries, historic art, contemporary art, and the contemporary collection is called the Visions of the Susquehanna Collection, and that's actually on display down at the Zimmerman Center for Heritage. The Susquehanna National Heritage Area already owns the Visions collection. You can go see that, well, not now, tomorrow. And so we're going to have this so it's going to have the historic and the contemporary collection, but then also have space for special exhibits. So we'll be able to bring in special exhibits that speak to the themes that we are dealing with here in this heritage area. So it's going to be a dynamic experience. It's going to be an experience that has a thesis behind it. So you're going to follow the trend of art through, starting in the earliest piece in his collection is a map that's drawn by Captain John Smith's expedition in 1627. So we're really excited to be able to include that aspect in this Discovery Center.
So Pete talked about, we have a, just so the audience knows, we are going to ask another 2 or 3 more questions, but then we're going to open up to you guys if you have questions for either Dami and me in our presentation, or
Not
Pete
me.
because of the Discovery Center. But, you know, when I think about the river, when I hike the new trail out there, the Susquehanna Riverlands new park, and you can look out over the river, there's something very spiritual about the river, and it's a time where I find myself at peace. I took my son recently on Pincho on paddleboarding, and he's like 2 years old. It was really sketchy, but he had a life vest on. My husband and I took him, and he was like a calmest 2-year-old you could ever imagine, just being on the water. There's something soothing about it. So as I love history for sure, but I'm also a nature enthusiast. So I'm really excited for this trail. So tell us more about this trail. Will people be able to see the river from the view? Like how long is it? How many miles?
Sure. So so we are going to have in total 4 miles of walking trails on the property, but really the kind of crown jewel in the walking trail system is the Freedom Path. And the heritage area was gifted 2 parcels of land about 15 or 20 years ago, a parcel on either side of the Route 30 bridge. So when you cross the Route 30 bridge and you get over here to York side, and you look on either side, all of that overgrown stuff we own. But when this property came into play, our president, Mark Platts, and we really got to give a shout out to Mark Platts, because if you know him, he gets this in his head that he's going to do, and he's probably going to watch this. But he really took this project on, and Mark is not a person who quits when he starts something, and that's really great. That's one of the reasons I'm here, is because I know this project is going to get done with Mark at the head of the organization. But anyway, Mark realized that the end of the Mifflin property and the beginning of this river parcel was only separated by about 800 feet, and in between is a parcel that's owned by PP&L, and they have no idea why they own it. They don't even know that they own it. And then there's a PennDOT right-of-way along Route 30. So what we are doing is going to have a trail, a Freedom Path, that goes from the front door of this house all the way down to the river parcel, and we're calling the parcel at the river Freedom's Crossing Riverfront Park. And so people are going to be able to follow the paths of the freedom seekers that left here and get down to the river, and that would be where the freedom seekers would have met Robert Loney and be rowed across the river. So it's going to be a park that honors Loney, honors the freedom seekers that had the courage to escape and to continue on that journey, but it's also going to be a space where you can launch a kayak, get out there on the river and feel at peace, fishing, and also a spot from where you'll be able to see the actual or the remnants of the 6 bridges that cross the Susquehanna. Will be just north of the site of the 1814 bridge. So that's really the crown jewel in the trail system. But one of the trails we actually own when you're headed back to your car. If you look across to the north, you'll see a big water tower. That's owned by the Wrightsville Borough Municipal Authority, but that's actually on our property. So we own up the hill between here and Route 30, and back there is the highest point on the property, and you can't see the river from up there. I was up there a few weeks ago. You can see Turkey Hill. You can see the Turkey Hill Experience, not Turkey Hill. But we are planning to put a tower or something up there, not too high, but something that you might be able to go up and see the river. And finally, if you really want to see the river, we will have on the side of the barn a silo lookout. So we're going to be building a glass tower on this east side of the barn and have a spiral staircase in the silo. There'll also be an elevator, but that you could go up and see the river from the side of the barn. So it's unfortunate. In the winter you can see the river, but the river is such a huge part of everything that we do around here that we want to have opportunity to engage with the river, even though it's not immediately visible.
So we've talked about your plans for the future, but if someone comes and visits the Mifflin House today in 2025, what can they do and see and experience when they visit the property?
Yeah, so it was one of my goals to open the house as quickly as safely possible. And when I started here less than a year ago, I'm only 51 weeks into my time here.
Are you counting?
Yeah, right? Who's counting? But anyway, one of the first things I did was I went with Mark and we signed the documents to put the construction project, our initial public access improvements, out to bid. So in the last year, we installed a new parking area, a driveway, and an ADA walkway through the center of the property. And once we did that, we were able to get a certificate of occupancy from the township and open this house for tours. So we're not, right now, as you mentioned, we're open every Saturday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We offer guided tours telling the story of the significance of this house at 10:30, 12:30, and 2:30 on those days. We have a self-guided tour that goes through the property, and we're working on extending a path out this way. We have the Pennsylvania Outdoor Corps coming in a few weeks, and they are going to blaze a trail. There's actually a pond in the center of the property that was supposed to be a dry pond. It was part of the stormwater management facility for the Wrights Crossing Business Park, and the Blessings dammed it up so they could fish in it. And so we're working with Hellam Township to do the necessary work in the Conservation District to keep it as a wet pond, but right now, we're going to have a path so you'll be able to get a little bit more into the property. So, so that's what we have available right now. People are coming and spending about 45 minutes to an hour here, depending on the conversations we get into. And then, as you mentioned, also we're having these special programs the third Thursday of the month, right here on the porch. I stole the idea from Hanover Junction when I gave a porch talk last year. I'm like, oh, that's a really good idea. Why don't we do that? So, yeah.
Do you have any last takeaways before we open it up to question and answer? Because it looks like it's getting a little bit.
So my takeaway is that we put up these canopies because of the threat of rain, and if we hadn't put them up, it would have started raining an hour ago. But since we did put them up, it hasn't rained yet. But we'll see.
Let's give Pete a round of applause, please.
I do want to put in a special thank you, a special plug to two people. One you already mentioned, Becky Zeller, has done amazing work uncovering the history of this house. But the person that really has continued to dive into the history of the house, and we're all better for it, is Barb Brundage, right over there. Barb is a retired National Park Service ranger. We're fortunate to have her here on staff as our interpretive specialist, and the sources that Barb has found over the last year and continues to find, I feel like every week there's something new. Oh, did you know about this? Oh, I found out this about Quakers. Oh, did you know this person was connected to this person? So there is active research going on. So you might come here and hear something tonight, or been here earlier today, and you might come back in 3 weeks and we know more or less about that subject. So Barb, just thank you so much for everything that you have done. That's my takeaway.
I think we have a few minutes before the rainstorm. Do we have any questions for Pete?
Did the Hubers pick up where the Mifflins left off regarding the
Underground Railroad? So the question is whether the Hubers were engaged in Underground Railroad activity. I have never seen any evidence of that. It seems like by 1846, by the time that Samuel sells, Underground Railroad is really focused more on people like Goodrich and William Whipper. And by that time, by 1850 also, the laws are becoming much more stringent. You have the passage of the 1850 Fugitive Slave Act. So I think that the roots are sort of passing by the farm by that point. And I don't know they're German, I'm assuming. I don't know much about their religious beliefs or their beliefs on slavery.
Wow, there's ice cream waiting for you.
Yeah,
so
go
guys,
get
thank
the
you
ice.
again for coming out tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.